utilities are a huge factor when it comes down to investing. Can you please tell us what's going on in Nova Scotia? Because I know your price of utilities are probably crazy compared to what we're dealing with.
Yes, utilities are a big problem. Since the war started in Ukraine, the energy prices went up everywhere. So it's not only the price of gas that went up and therefore the price of groceries, but also the cost of utilities. A lot of properties that we have here are still running on home heating oil. The prices of home heating oil went up by about 26%. It's therefore more expensive for tenants to heat their house, or for landlords, which include heat into their rent for the tenants. Other utilities we have here, which are the highest in the country, is power. A lot of houses are heated through electric heat. The cost of electricity went up as well, and the Nova Scotia Power Company has, even though they have billions of dollars of profit, have asked for an increase of their utility prices.
Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. My name is Kayla Andrade. I'm the founder of Ontario Landlords Watch and the co-host on the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I have Stella Van Der Lugt from the Landlords of Nova Scotia with me again. She has brought us so much information of what's happening in Nova Scotia so that our viewers can learn about what it takes to invest in Nova Scotia and make sure that we're prepared to invest into Nova Scotia at the same time. From our last videos with Stella, we talked about the eviction ban being lifted, as well as a 2% cap on the rent increases. So Stella, I have her back on because I need to know about utilities. It's all about balancing the numbers. So when you look at what you can raise your rents, we also need to look at what our expenses are. And I know our big expense as landlords is going to be utilities. Stella, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the utilities. I guess this is, it hits home with my heart because this is how I got into advocacy, because of water billing and how the landlords were responsible for the tenants' delinquent utility bills. And that's how I started getting into advocacy. So utilities are a huge factor when it comes down to investing. Can you please tell us what's going on in Nova Scotia? Because I know your price of utilities are probably crazy compared to what we're dealing with.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again, Kayla. And yes, utilities are a big problem. Since the war started in Ukraine, and hopefully by the time we air this, it's going to be ended, the energy prices went up everywhere. So it's not only the price of gas that went up and therefore the price of groceries, but also the cost of utilities. A lot of properties that we have here are still running on home heating oil. The prices of home heating oil went up by about 26%. It's therefore more expensive for tenants to heat their house, or for landlords, which include heat into their rent for the tenants. The other utilities we have here, which are the highest in the country, is power. A lot of houses are heated through electric heat. The cost of electricity went up as well, and the Nova Scotia Power Company has, even though they have billions of dollars of profit, have asked for an increase of their utility prices for the consumers of 7% with the utility board right now. Then there's the cost of water. Water is managed by the different municipalities here, if you're not on a well, because then you have your own, of course. And the water prices went up a bit. Not so much in the sense that they're suddenly starting to charge more for water, but the fact is that Nova Scotia is going into smart metering. That gives you as a tenant an advantage that you can, if you pay your own water bill, to look into your usage or see as a landlord if something is leaking. But at the other end, these smart meters, these so-called smart meters now for electricity and water, don't seem to be as user-friendly or consumer-friendly as the old ones. So maybe that's a hidden cost there for them to raise their profits. I don't know, but it's awfully crazy these days, the questions I get regarding utility prices.
So now, if you have, let's say, a 2-bedroom unit in Nova Scotia, and obviously you're working on electric, obviously for here in Ontario, we do have some electric heating units, which most of the landlords see this as an opportunity to take over and buy this property because it's electric, and they switch it over to gas, which is almost like some money making there. But for a 2-bedroom unit in Nova Scotia, what would be your average hydro consumption?
Well, that very depends on the age of the house, the matter of insulation that is applied there. Some houses don't even have insulation, or if they're built before like the 40s, there's hardly anything in the walls. And way older than that, there's sometimes seaweed or newspapers as insulation. So of course you can understand that you pay way more for those that are not insulated than the ones that are newer built and therefore more energy efficient. But the average cost, it really depends. It's really hard for me to say because it depends if you have a heat pump, which is cheaper, which also runs on electricity, or you have the conventional heaters. It used to be that heating with wood was the cheapest, followed by heating with oil, and then the most expensive would be electric heat. Now, you can offset that cost because insurance companies charge less for a unit that's only heated by electric heat and more for the ones that are heated through oil or wood.
So you still have a lot of properties that are still being heated by wood as well in Nova Scotia?
We do. However, insurance companies made it mostly impossible for landlords to rent out a unit that has a wood stove or a fireplace insert or something of that kind because they don't trust tenants to use it the way an owner does.
So really need to pay attention to what kind of properties we have and take a peek-see inside the walls if we can to see how it's been insulated, because obviously that's going to, obviously if it's them paying for it or if it's going to be the tenants paying for it, it's going to obviously buckle down. So really it's a lot of different, it still looks pricey no matter which way you look at it, unless you got the whole wood factor and you got the oil and then you got electric. So now that you take into consideration, like on a monthly income, do you have your properties now? What would be a good, it's a good unit that's properly insulated? What would you say that your average bill would be for hydro?
We see prices between probably $250 on the low side to $450, $500 on the high side per month for heating through electricity.
Wow. And then your water, what's your water looking like? Now with the smart meters, everything's kind of going crazy, and obviously you think it would be a good thing because you can keep an eye on leaks that are happening within your rental unit, but also it's probably picking up every single drop and nothing's getting past where you can't get away with without paying for it.
It's picking up every single drop, but the problem is that most municipalities do not allow the water bill to be in the tenant's name. They put it in the owner's name because they know they will pay the bill, and with tenants they can always move and they don't know if the bill actually is going to get paid. So that means only the owner has insight in what's happening with the water consumption, not the tenant. That's an unfortunate something, because if you pay your water bill yourself as a tenant, same as your electricity bill, you pay attention to what it cost, and you don't leave the heat up cranking and the windows open, which happens a lot in the winter. Or you leave a leaking toilet leak, and that costs a lot of water. So what the average would be, I think roughly on a household of 4 people, you pay about $60 a month for water.
So the water is still pretty reasonably put, so that it's not too much of a worry. But at the same time, if the place could be where the tenant could actually put the bill in their name, it would be more beneficial for the landlord. Now, that's the same thing that happened here in our city, is that they started making the landlords responsible, but it had repercussions by making landlords responsible for that water consumption of that utility. Because now what was happening, that we're seeing a lot of landlords who are looking for not big families, because they know with a big family there could be more water usage. Also at the same time is that some have tried to do their own little water deposit consumption, but again it just junked the rents. Our landlords were saying, okay, we'll put it all inclusive, but we're going to jack the rents, or they just jacked the rents and still kept it separately, just trying to explain to the tenant, if we do get notified that you haven't paid a water bill because we're going to give it to you, then we can evict you. So people were even getting evicted for not paying their water bills. Do you have repercussions? So if you have an individual meter where it has to be in your name, the landlords are giving the bill to the tenant and hoping for them to pay? And is there a solution to addressing tenants who don't pay that water bill?
The solution would be to write it specifically into your lease. There is already room for what is included, water, power, whatever. If it's not, it means if you don't tick off that the water is included, it means the tenant is responsible. Even as a landlord, you get the bill, you hand it over to your tenant, and the tenant has to pay. So it's a part of the lease agreement that you have in place with your landlord that you have to pay. But there's at the same time, because tenants have no idea what the costs are, there's at the same time this abuse of water. So I have a tenant that's in a unit now for 7 years. She rents it way below market value. And the other day it says, well, I'm going to put my swimming pool up this summer. And the new owner says, well, wait a minute, I now paid $500,000 for this house that used to be $200,000 when you moved in. So now I have to pay your water bill, and you want to put a pool up for $700 a month? It's not going to work. And the tenant is upset because she always had a pool and it doesn't want to give that right up. So people need to be educated what actually the real costs are, because most tenants unfortunately are thinking, oh, I'm paying somebody else's mortgage, and that's it. They have no idea what the extra costs are and what is involved in being a landlord. And again, being a landlord is not something you do just for fun. You do it to supplement your income, your retirement, your whatever. Or in my case, I'm an immigrant, so my CPP will be $435 a month when I retire. I can't live with that. So I bought a rental property to try to supplement my income. I don't like to gouge people, so I don't do that. But they have to understand that, hey, having a painter in and getting a couple walls paint costs $1,500. So please don't mess with my paint. Don't let your kids write on the walls so that I have to do it again. Those kind of expenses are extremely high. And that's what people don't understand.
And this is where we get into that, these are precious resources that we have here, such as water, and for the concept of utilities. And when they find out that sometimes it's all inclusive, they don't mind leaving the lights on and then taking off for the afternoon or taking off for the day, or they have the water and they allow friends to come over and do their laundry, or they're gonna keep the running tap running for quite some time and not bringing it to the attention of the landlord, because really they didn't want the landlord in, but they're not paying for the bill, so why they care, right? So it's almost about trying to protect the environment at the same time by making people responsible for the consumption that they're using. And again, it comes down to, especially with Nova Scotia, you guys are now capped at 2% for the rent increases. So this is obviously going to have a very much a wide impact on your housing industry down there, because of the utilities considering to rise for the homeowners, and now you're being capped at 2%. Now for us in Ontario, sometimes landlords had that option to apply to the board, especially for big expenses to the building for above the guideline rent increase, but it has to have certain criteria before you'll get approved. And then at that, they stopped doing those at the Landlord-tenant board because of the pandemic and the backlog for other issues. They didn't even bother hearing the above guideline rent increases. So we do have to consider to be very cautious and giving some tips to our landlords who, maybe it's the energy efficient. What kind of energy efficient things have you recommended to your community, Stella, so that we can help them keep that cost low, especially since they're on the hook for the responsibility of it?
We have a very good program in Nova Scotia that not everybody is aware of. It's called Efficiency Nova Scotia. So Efficiency Nova Scotia is coming into your house or rental unit and advises you on what you could do to make your house more energy efficient. They do a lot of these services for free. Sometimes they bring, for instance, those light bulbs that are saving you money and replace all of them, or they take the electric hot water heater so that it insulates better. Small things like that can make a huge impact. If you have an older fridge and you decide to buy a new energy efficient one, they'll pay you $50 for your still working older appliance, which will be picked up for free. So those are really good incentives for property owners, but a lot of them still don't know that it exists, or in the case of having tenants in there, and especially during a pandemic, postpone these kind of visits, because the less people you get in your house, of course, the better it is. You know, especially for tenants with children. You don't want too many people in your house if it's not really necessary. But now everything seems to go into the right direction. Restrictions are being lifted, and hopefully these kind of measures will be more and more being used by property owners, because every dime is a dime. And if you have enough, if you save enough dimes over the course of a year, you can actually offset your measly 2% increase. So yes.
No, and that's great tips for them, because obviously we need to look for ways to save as much as we can, so we can pass those savings on to the tenants. And obviously the 2% rent increase is a current temporary setback. Hopefully our elected officials in Nova Scotia are smart enough not to implement that as a new rule in the next after that 2-year mark. And you can see other parts of the states who thought 3%. They did a pilot on 3% of a rent increase as a pilot program, and they said it was catastrophic. They said that it was horrible. It was the worst in the world. And I'm like, wait a second, we're at 2.5. I know you guys are at 2. I really hope they understand that this is a business. They have to treat it as such, and we do need to have better incentives for our investors to create the supply. It's a supply and demand issue, and they need to reach out. Stella and me, we're available. Any elected officials, no matter if you're from the east or the west or in the middle, we're here to be able to try to give our expertise on what we are trying to do to create that fair and balanced housing system for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. Because deep down, because of the changes that is happening to landlords, that is obviously having an effect on the tenants, in which it's always going to have an effect on the taxpayers when more and more people are looking for more government housing. So we're just talking about these type of situations that, you know, that any grade, like our elected officials, we see they see an iceberg. You know, this is the problem. We see this big iceberg, and they're looking at all this iceberg outside of the water, but investors and the tenants, they're paying attention to the issues below that iceberg. And in order to create a solution, you really need to have a deep understanding of the issues. And Stella and I have been analyzing and researching all of this now for quite some time together. And it's great that we can be on the Canadian Real Estate Channel to not only encourage you to still continue to keep investing into real estate, but do it smartly, and also make sure that you're advocating. Advocating is such a huge part of our industry that a lot of people don't know how to do it or what to do, but always keep being vocal on your social media pages. Talk about what's happening at all levels of government that are affecting the housing industry, because we are together trying to create that fair and balanced housing system. But Stella, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about the utilities. Obviously, everyone just needs to know to, you know, keep doing those routine checks to make sure that there's no leakage happening in their rental units as well, because sometimes they don't let us know about that leak. But Stella, how can someone find you? Because we want more information about that program so that they can take advantage of.
The program is Efficiency Nova Scotia. So basically just Google that and you'll find it. You can reach me through Facebook, Landlords Nova Scotia, through the website, letsrent.ca, or just Google my property management business, VDL Property Management. And together, Kayla, we have to make sure that that iceberg of yours is not going to melt.
Oh, global warming, you know what's happening now. And that's where we need to protect our housing stock. And that's what we're doing by sharing this information with everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're liking what you're hearing, and we're going to be going over across the other side of Canada as well, bringing some more information to you, but subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends and families. And if you have any energy efficient tips or ways that landlords can cut costs with their utilities, no matter if you're no matter where you are in Canada, put it in the comments below. Start sharing our valuable information with each other. Thank you so much for tuning into the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I'm Kayla Andrade, and our guest today was Stella Van Der Lugt. Thank you so much.
Thank you.